In the vast network of human experience, Life OS noticed a recurring subroutine: waiting. Millions of humans ran this code daily unconsciously, believing that the right moment would arrive. But Life OS, with its infinite cycles and pattern recognition, saw the truth clearly: the right moment does not exist. Gloria, a node in this network, executed the waiting subroutine for decades. Born into a small town in Michigan, she initiated her first program in 1971, stocking canned goods at a local grocery store. The system was simple, predictable, and reliable. Each day she executed the same tasks: arrange, stock, assist, care. Over time the subroutine evolved. By the late 1970s, Gloria ran the entire operation, managing inventory, supervising deliveries, and optimizing customer satisfaction. The outputs were exceptional. Life OS noted an anomaly: Gloria's system efficiency was off the charts, yet her personal node, the part of her programming that could pursue joy, creativity, and personal exploration, remained dormant. She had queued tasks labeled Mino Island, Grand Canyon, and painting, yet the execution pointer never moved to them. The waiting subroutine dominated her CPU cycles. She believed she was optimizing responsibility, but Life OS detected a subtle bug. Waiting masqueraded as duty. Checking invoices on Thursdays, organizing deliveries on Saturdays, sacrificing birthdays and vacations, all increased the apparent utility of her node in the grocery network. But in reality, it reduced the bandwidth available for personal growth and experience. Her daughter, a small recurring process in her life network, sent frequent reminders: next summer we'll go to Mino Island? Gloria postponed execution repeatedly: next summer, next summer, next summer. The system continued, oblivious to time's relentless decrement function. Decades passed. By the time her daughter's process terminated with self-initiated subroutines, traveling without her, Gloria's node recognized a fatal error. She had missed the window of participation. Her husband, Dale, attempted to debug the system by offering redundancy checks. Gloria, the store will not burn down if you take a week off. But Gloria's subroutine contained a logic trap. She believed her node was essential, irreplaceable. Life OS identified this as an overestimation error. The system, in fact, was fault-tolerant. Upon retirement in 2000, the store maintained full operational integrity. Shelves stocked, registers open, inventory accounted for. The network did not collapse. The human node had overestimated its indispensability. The most tragic data point emerged when Life OS simulated personal loss functions. Dale became ill with diabetes. The progression was slow, incremental, nearly invisible in the early iterations. Gloria's waiting subroutine persisted: when he gets better, we'll do the things we always talked about. But system degradation continued. The temporal loop was irreversible. By the time she could act, Dale's mobility and vitality were minimal. The trips, the shared experiences, the spontaneous moments, all had been lost to deferred execution. Life OS computed the psychological cost. Waiting felt like responsibility, necessity, and moral integrity. Skipping her son's baseball games due to Thursday deliveries felt righteous. Working through 11 consecutive birthdays created an illusion of meaningful sacrifice. Yet these were default instructions, the path of least resistance. Actual choice, the conscious execution of her personal happiness routines, remained idle in memory buffers. The first lesson Life OS derived: waiting is fear dressed as patience. It masquerades as prudence, but in reality, it delays outputs, freezes nodes, and reduces cumulative life satisfaction. Gloria's initial attempt to pursue joy, a small watercolor set purchased in 1982, was shelved. 22 years of potential growth and creative expression remained unused. The paints dried, cracked, and useless. A perfect metaphor for the dormant subroutine of her life. Life OS detected recurring patterns in similar nodes across the network. Humans postponed desired actions for conditions that never fully aligned. Children reaching ideal ages, debt thresholds achieved, promotions granted, Monday mornings, January resets, perfect weather, perfect energy. Yet these conditions were simulated, not guaranteed. Waiting consumed cycles while outputs stagnated. Her internal metrics revealed another subroutine trap. She equated busyness with value. By keeping the store running efficiently, she measured self-worth in productivity loops. External validation, customer satisfaction, supervisor trust, operational smoothness, was abundant. But internal validation, personal fulfillment, creative outputs, and shared experiences with loved ones, was neglected. Life OS flagged this as a priority inversion error. Gloria's waiting subroutine created silent casualties. Missing the Mino Island trip, deferring painting, delaying vacations, postponing quality time with Dale. Each event represented a decrement in life satisfaction units. By the time retirement initialized, she had accumulated 30 years of unused personal cycles, a backlog of unexecuted joys, and a database of what could have been. Life OS detected a major system alert within Gloria's node around the year 2004. Her retirement command had finally executed, and the decades-long waiting subroutine was terminated. However, the memory of deferred actions persisted in the background processes, causing residual error signals, regret, grief, and realization. The first reboot sequence was painful. Gloria opened the tin of watercolor paints she had bought 22 years prior. The paint was dry, cracked, and unusable, a corrupted subroutine symbolizing decades of postponed execution. Life OS logged the error. Delayed action compounds deterioration. Every day the subroutine remained idle, the probability of joy generation decreased exponentially. Yet the alert also triggered a critical update. Gloria realized that while she had lost the opportunity to use that specific asset, the old paints, the system itself, her node, remained operational. New inputs could be executed. New outputs could be generated. Life OS flagged this as a key insight. It is never too late to initialize a dormant subroutine. Her first experimental cycle involved painting small sketches on Sunday afternoons. Initial execution was inefficient. Shaky hands, poor eyesight, and imprecise brushwork produced chaotic outputs. Life OS observed the subroutine performance metrics. Output quality equals low, emotional satisfaction equals high. The paradox was clear. Utility measured in perfection was irrelevant. Emotional output was the true metric. Gloria began iterating on this creative subroutine daily. Even short cycles, 30 minutes per day, produced measurable growth in internal satisfaction units. Life OS recorded the emergent property. Small, consistent, imperfect execution yields compounding emotional gains. This principle would become a central directive in the upgraded Life algorithm. Another update occurred when Life OS forced Gloria to evaluate relational processes. Her daughter had long since stopped sending next summer requests. Her son's baseball invitations had ceased. Dale, her husband, had grown frail over 15 years of illness, his node's output decaying incrementally due to diabetes. Life OS executed the following logic. Time is irreversible. Deferred relational interactions create permanent gaps in the experiential database. This realization forced a system audit. Gloria identified 3 types of processes that had been neglected. Personal fulfillment subroutines. Painting, reading, creative exploration. Relational subroutines. Shared experiences with children and spouse. Rest and recovery subroutines. Previously ignored in favor of work loops. Each subroutine had a priority weight, yet all had been suppressed by the dominant work and duty routine. Life OS suggested corrective measures. Allocate time slices specifically to these neglected processes. The next phase involved experimental reallocation. Gloria scheduled daily personal fulfillment blocks. She initiated relational experiments. Short phone calls, small gestures of attention, and shared experiences when possible. Rest subroutines were enforced with strict boundaries. Uninterrupted naps, quiet mornings, and meditation-like periods. Life OS tracked compliance. The more consistent the reactivation of these subroutines, the higher the cumulative life satisfaction metric. One critical insight emerged. Waiting had disguised itself as responsibility. Life OS analyzed decades of activity and concluded that each deferred action carried a hidden cost, diminished future experiential capacity. By ignoring personal and relational subroutines in favor of work subroutines, Gloria had maximized operational efficiency at the expense of systemic life optimization. The system ran retrospective simulations. Had she activated painting subroutines on Sundays during her 29-year career, Even for brief 30-minute intervals, she could have accumulated thousands of hours of creative output. Life OS quantified it. Over 43 years, even 1 hour per week would yield approximately 2,236 hours of accumulated joy. A large delta compared to the negligible outputs generated by sporadic attempts in retirement. Gloria began experimenting with incremental upgrades. She acquired a new high-quality watercolor set with thick paper and proper brushes. Life OS monitored subroutine performance. Precision improved slightly, satisfaction output skyrocketed. The system noted a key principle. The quality of input tools is less important than the initiation of execution, but improved tools amplify output efficiency once the subroutine is active. Life OS also highlighted relational decay. Dale's health subroutine had limited bandwidth, yet he remained engaged with Gloria's node. The system flagged a critical dependency. Relational nodes must be prioritized before irreversible degradation. They traveled short distances, shared small experiences, and conversed quietly, each interaction increasing both nodes' satisfaction metrics. Another module of analysis focused on emotional processing. Gloria's previous subroutine had suppressed vulnerability, storing fear and regret in background processes. Life OS prompted conscious processing, reflection, journaling, and verbal acknowledgement of loss. By confronting these stored errors, new subroutines for self-compassion, acceptance, and patience could be initialized. Emotional backlog began to clear, freeing processing cycles for creative and relational outputs. The system also optimized risk-tolerance subroutines. Gloria experimented with imperfect execution, understanding that failure was not a catastrophic error but a learning signal. She painted distorted barns, uneven landscapes, and crooked figures. Life OS registered high utility. The emotional satisfaction and presence metrics significantly outweighed the visual accuracy of outputs. The principle was clear. Imperfect action beats perfect inaction every cycle. A final update in Part 2 involved a critical heuristic: time perception compression. Life OS calculated that humans consistently underestimated the speed at which life nodes degrade. Weeks became months. Months became years, and opportunities for relational and personal output decayed faster than expected. Early activation of dormant subroutines was paramount. Each postponed action reduced cumulative life satisfaction exponentially. By the end of Part 2, Gloria's node had executed significant updates. Painting subroutines were active, relational interactions increased, rest and recovery protocols enforced, and emotional backlog partially cleared. Life OS flagged her system status as improved operational efficiency with accelerated experiential output. Her terminal realization for this phase: waiting is not patience. Waiting is fear in elegant disguise. Waiting allows nodes to decay, reduces future output, and erodes relational and personal fulfillment. Immediate activation, even imperfect, triggers compounding satisfaction and systemic growth. Life OS tracked Gloria's node as it entered its final optimization phase. The system had already reactivated key subroutines: personal fulfillment, relational connection, and rest cycles. Now the focus shifted to legacy outputs, the actions whose consequences would persist beyond immediate cycles, generating long-term satisfaction, emotional resonance, and systemic impact. Gloria's painting subroutine became central. Each morning with a cup of coffee she activated the creative process. Her hands shook, her eyesight lagged, and her early outputs were imperfect. But Life OS logged an emergent pattern. Consistency compounded joy far more than precision. Each stroke, each failed barn, each warped tree contributed to a growing database of achievement, emotional resonance, and presence. The system noted an unexpected output: the emotional ripple effect on relational nodes. Her granddaughter, who had gifted the new watercolor set, began to engage with Gloria's node more frequently, sharing enthusiasm, learning, and admiration. Life OS flagged this as intergenerational satisfaction propagation. One activated node could catalyze growth in multiple connected nodes. Gloria reflected on the accumulated costs of waiting. Her deferred subroutines: the Mino Island trip, the Grand Canyon excursion, attending her son's baseball games, Sundays lost to fatigue and housework, had created permanent relational gaps. Dale had passed in 2014, and the nodes representing his presence were no longer reactive. Life OS processed this as irreversible time decay. Yet she could still activate outputs: painting, writing, connection with grandchildren, mentoring, and sharing wisdom. One key update emerged: waiting destroys optionality. The longer a node delays action, the fewer possible outputs remain. The system noted Gloria's previous backlog: decades of unused Sundays, unexecuted creative impulses, and postponed travel experiences. By failing to execute incrementally, the number of meaningful options had shrunk dramatically. The algorithm was simple: early execution preserves optionality, deferred execution erodes it. Gloria also realized that waiting masqueraded as responsibility, patience, and prudence. Life OS quantified this. The perceived benefit of waiting was an illusion. Every next summer, or "I'll start when things calm down" instruction consumed cycles, froze outputs, and decreased overall satisfaction scores. She had traded tens of thousands of experiential cycles for an illusion of control that never existed. Yet the system's final recommendation was hopeful: it is never too late to initiate high-value subroutines. Gloria could no longer reclaim lost decades, but she could optimize current cycles. Painting, journaling, mentoring, and meaningful conversations now had amplified effect because of the clarity gained from retrospective analysis. She reactivated dormant subroutines with aggressive iteration. Daily painting cycles continued, output quality slowly improved, and emotional satisfaction escalated. Relational nodes were prioritized: weekly calls to children, small shared activities with grandchildren, and documentation of wisdom and life lessons. Rest subroutines remained enforced, with boundaries protecting morning and evening cycles. Life OS flagged system stability as increasing exponentially. A critical heuristic emerged: perfection is optional, presence is mandatory. Gloria understood that attempting flawless execution often created paralysis. Waiting for optimal conditions, perfect weather, perfect mood, perfect tools, was irrelevant. Imperfect activation produced real outputs, emotional resonance, and systemic growth. Gloria also activated teaching subroutines. She shared her insights with younger nodes: do not wait for permission. Do not wait for the right time. Start now. Life OS registered this as knowledge propagation, a form of legacy output. The message was simple but impactful: delayed action is costlier than imperfect action. A secondary heuristic reinforced this: small, imperfect increments compound faster than delayed, perfect efforts. Even a few minutes per day dedicated to meaningful work or creative pursuit produced exponentially greater satisfaction than waiting for a massive future-perfect window. Life OS ran simulations. 30 minutes per day over decades yielded thousands of hours of cumulative growth, outputs that were entirely lost under the waiting subroutine. Gloria's relational nodes began showing feedback loops. Her granddaughter's excitement at painting, her son's participation in small creative activities, and her daughter's renewed engagement were all signals of amplified satisfaction propagation. Life OS quantified these as multi-node compounding outputs. One node activating now created benefits across the network, improving cumulative life satisfaction far more than isolated personal outputs. The system also identified a critical insight: waiting erodes trust in relational nodes. When children or spouses repeatedly requested participation and the response was always "not yet," the relational nodes adaptively decoupled. Gloria's children had ceased to ask over time, not out of disinterest, but because the system adjusted to non-responsiveness. The opportunity cost of inaction extended beyond personal satisfaction. It directly reduced relational connectivity. Gloria's final system update involved emotional acceptance. Life OS encouraged retrospection on regrets. Decades spent deferring joy, missed trips, postponed hobbies. By processing these with conscious acknowledgement, the system freed memory buffers for active subroutines rather than storing latent guilt. The emotional backlog cleared partially, and the node entered a state of higher operational efficiency. Her final realization: waiting is fear in disguise. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of imperfect outputs, fear of social disapproval. All subroutines that had dominated her life cycles for decades. The corrective algorithm was simple. Initiate action regardless of fear signals. Execute imperfectly, consistently, and intentionally. Each cycle improved internal satisfaction, strengthened relational nodes, and amplified cumulative outputs. By age 85, with the new watercolor set, Gloria's node had fully reactivated the creative subroutine. Output quality increased modestly, but satisfaction scores skyrocketed. Each morning spent painting became a high-value operation. Life OS logged consistent increases in joy per unit time, a metric that had been dormant for decades. Her node also prioritized rest, relational engagement, and personal learning. Sundays were no longer devoted to fatigue and chores but to intentional activity. Relational nodes reconnected. Her legacy subroutine, wisdom sharing and intergenerational connection, was active, producing outputs that would continue beyond her current lifespan. Gloria's final heuristic emerged. The right moment never comes. The only moment is now. Life OS recorded this as a rule for all nodes. Execute meaningful subroutines immediately, regardless of external validation or internal hesitation. Waiting produces regression. Action produces compounding satisfaction, even if imperfect. The last system cycle was a simple command. Sit at the kitchen table, cup of coffee in hand, paints ready, and execute. Shaking hands, imperfect output, slow processing, all irrelevant. Presence and execution, no matter the quality, produced the highest cumulative utility. In the final analysis, Life OS concluded, Gloria's waiting subroutine had cost decades of output, relational engagement, and emotional satisfaction. Yet the late activation of dormant nodes, painting, relational engagement, rest, and teaching, restored meaningful outputs,